Hey guys, welcome to the first in a series of new videos that I'm going to do. I've had a lot of requests for kind of an over-the-shoulder type of video where we actually take you inside and you see the actual process of writing a piece of music from start to finish. It can be interesting, it can be kind of ugly, you know, it's it's a process, and it's a different process almost every time, at least for me. So I'm just gonna start the video, and we're gonna start from the very beginning. And with this particular piece, the only thing I really have in mind is it has something to do with spring, and that we're um, dealing with some of the emotions and some of the things that have been happening because of the COVID-19 crisis, and that's about all I have to go on at the moment, at least in my mind. So I do have a couple. I do have one little idea from melodic motif, and that's where I'm going to start. So I'm going to switch screens here, and you're going to see it from the very beginning, and we'll see how this goes. This will be several parts tonight. I'll just get you familiar with the actual instrument palette that I've decided on, and start the process. And then the next section will be we'll just develop as the videos go on. So here we go. We're gonna go into Logic here, and I'm gonna go over the template really quickly. So what I've decided on here for this particular piece is I'm going to go with Spitfire's BBC Orchestra. I've been playing around with this since it first came out. I've been very happy with a lot of it. I think it's got a great sound. It's got some things that they're working out that are getting better, and the newest release of it, the newest update, has some good stuff in it. But they added bass flute, which is always nice to have, and the ability to switch platforms, which maybe we'll get into a little bit later. But real quickly, I'm going to run down the template here. So set up in score order as normal. We start with the woodwinds. I've got piccolo, and these are all going to be multi-articulation key switch patches in the player here. If you're not familiar with the program, with the library, Spitfire has its own proprietary player for this particular library, and this is it. Here's all of your articulations down here. Here's the key switch where it starts, in this case in C1. This is modulation. This is expression. This is one of those assignable knobs, which at this point right now has reverb on it, but you can control the vibrato with it. And let's see what that's. I can't remember. It's probably set to 21, which I'll probably change that to 2, to CC2. But anyway, we'll put it on reverb again. Right now I haven't got any reverb on it. It's just the actual hall sound that came with the instruments. And then what I do when I set up a template like this, especially when I use key switches, you could do this in just about every DAW, is I set up my little list over here so you can see I know which key switch goes to which articulation. So in this case, C1 on the piccolo goes to legato, then C sharp 1 is long, and so on down through all of the standard articulations that they have. One thing I do like about this library so far is they include the multi-tongue patch or multi-tongue articulation as part of the standard articulations, whereas with their symphony orchestra, it's part of the extended articulations. So it's nice to just have that one right there to without having to go search for it through different folders and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, back to the score. We got piccolo, solo flute. I like to separate out at least one flute voice. This may turn into one or two by the time we're done with this piece, but I always start with a solo flute, and then in this case we're going for a big orchestra sound. So the flute section is going to be A3, then solo oboe, and oboe's A3, and then English horn. I always include English horn in my orchestral templates. It's, for me, especially with film work, it's one of the better solo instruments in terms of sitting in that frequency range, where it just really sounds can convey a wide array of emotions. So I definitely like to use English horn anglais. Solo clarinets, bass clarinet, bassoon, solo bassoon, and bassoons again A3, and then contrabassoon. There is a contrabass clarinet. I don't usually write for that unless it's a very specific thing that I'm looking for. It's easy to pull that up and create that patch. But in the standard template, I don't have it. Moving on to brass, we have solo French horn, and then horns A4. This will probably be augmented by a couple of horns A2 patches, because I tend to write horns in pairs, and there is a difference in the sound. In my standard symphony template for the Spitfire symphony, I have both A2 patches and A4 patches. Same with the trombones. So I'll probably add another couple voices here, couple tracks here before we're done here. Solo trumpet, section trumpets, trombones, section trombones, bass trombones, tuba. I didn't include cimbasso in this particular template, although I do tend to write for it a lot. I like the sound of it. Again, that might be something that I'll add in depending on how this piece goes. I'm trying to keep it a fairly standard orchestra piece this time around. Not trying to get too crazy with the instrumentation, too exotic, but I'll probably pull in some other ones. Percussion. Yeah, even though the timpani is key switched like all the rest of the patches, I like to separate out my hits and rolls into two separate tracks. So here's the hits, and there's both hard and soft, and also hot rods. So that's a nice timbre change if you want that. And then the rolls, same. You can see here. So these are already preset to D6 for the soft rolls, and controllable by modulation. Snares, a couple of different setups. We'll see how that goes. I don't use it too much. Bass drums, again, two different options in bass drums. Piatti, and again, I separate out my piatti and my cymbals. Cymbals being more like splash cymbals, crash, and cymbal rolls, where the piatti is obviously its own thing. And then I have a couple general percussion tracks, usually where I can pull up toys, triangles, tambourines, tam-tam. I don't have tom-toms queued up in this. I probably won't use them in this piece. It's not that kind of a piece, but if I do, they're easy enough to pull up. And then we go to celeste. and marimba, Glock, pretty standard orchestral percussion, piano, and harps. I've got two different kinds of BBC harps, and I've just got them both up because I'm not sure which one I like. They have a slightly different sound to them, and I do occasionally write for two harps. And then you come to the only instruments that I'm not using from the BBC library, and this is the new Noir piano from Native Instruments. This is the newest library that they've released in conjunction with an artist, and I really like the sound of this piano. It is has a really nice mellow, dark sound to it, and I've been enjoying it quite a bit. So that's the one I've set it in a space that's a bit more symphonic. Emotional piano, which I almost always have pulled up. Very clean, very flexible piano sound. Really usable in a lot of different styles. Easy to EQ, easy to mix. Definitely one of my favorites. And then vibes. Then we go into the strings. One of the things I really like about the BBC library is this, the patch of all of the strings have leaders. So the section leaders are separate patches. So here we have the violin, concertmaster, basically. Violins 1, and then violins 2 leader, and violins 2, violas leader, and so on all the way down through the section. It's really nice. It gives it just a little bit more depth, and you get a little bit different sound when you layer those on top. Even though they're playing in unison, they're playing the same line. It just has a little bit more depth. I used to use some solo libraries on top of other string libraries for that kind of sound. So, like, again, for instance, the Spitfire Symphony Orchestra, I would use the Spitfire solo strings on top of the symphony violins. Or with the LA scoring strings, they had a first chair option, and so those would be separate patches from the section, and then that just gave it that much more dimension and a little bit more variation and tonal color and all that kind of stuff. So it just really added to the realism. So anyway, that's again, these are all key switched patches listed over here because I haven't got them memorized, and I don't use articulation maps in Logic for a couple of reasons. One, they're not as accurate in Logic as they are in Cubase, and two, they seem to have some issues with the Spitfire player. They're better with Contact, but at least I'm having problems with them being consistent and remembering their articulations with the Spitfire player instruments. Again, the Spitfire libraries that are in Contact seems to be fine, but the player themselves, they don't play well together. I'm not sure what it is. So anyway, so that's the template. I don't have any routing set up on this one. This is a fairly new template. It's not one that I've sort of rotated into my normal workflow, so I don't have it routed immediately so that I can just mix from this. I tend to go to audio, render everything out in audio, and then mix from that point. So we'll see how this works as it goes through the process tonight. So that's it. That's the template. So like most guys, I tend to start... we'll just talk about one thing, the way I set it up. I always give myself, if I'm going to start the piece on bar 1, then I back off the starting point of the file itself. These are my global tracks up here: marker, signature, tempo. That's excuse me, most of what I use. I don't really use a whole lot of like arrangement tracks and things like that. Those are nice. I don't use them that much. Usually markers are, and I can, when I'm scoring a film, I tend to have a lot of markers up here. Um, and then have to organize them vertically on a list. Um, but I tend to give myself 2 bars ahead of time so that in case I need to get in any key switches or CC information that I want right before a note on B1 or something like that, then it gives me that. And then you'll notice that I have the offset for the SMPTE up here set so that bar 1, even though there's 2 bars lead in, bar 1 is 0 hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. So if I were to pull in a video, a movie file or something like that, place it at 1, it's going to be 0, 0, 0. But that's not what this is about tonight. Tonight is purely, non-programmatic music that's for purely creative, personal use, and that's it. So I'm gonna keep going here now. So I had this motivic idea that's really simple. It plays with going back and forth between 2 different modes, between Ionian and Lydian mode, and or at least that's what I think it is. We'll see if that's what it turns out to be. But a very simple idea that I can, basically 4 or 5 notes that I can just try and spin out as much as I can't get as much material as I can out of it. So I'll play this for you on the piano here. That's it. So that's only 3 notes, really. I really like this relationship between the major sevenths here, between the B and the C, and then the large skip. I think it has a lot of different, it can go a lot of different ways there. It's got sort of a melancholy sound to it. It has a joyful sound to it between this, that big skip up a fifth, and then settling back down. So anyway, so that's about where we're at. Probably we'll just, for argument's sake, we'll just start in the key of C. If I stop talking, it's because I'm not used to talking while I'm thinking about this kind of stuff. So this is oftentimes, again, this is not always the way I do it. It's not always the way I start, but tonight this is the way this piece is starting, is just with this little motive. And you'll see me just sit and play around with it until I figure out something that I want, that I kind of like, and then we'll start to work with it a little bit. So here we go. Let's see. Probably not that, but so we just took repeated it again, and then a shift in mode again, So going here, we wound up on the G. So we went, let's see. And back. Sort of playing on that idea that you don't want to repeat things. You want to repeat them, but you want to change them just a little bit. And then I wanted to go back down after we got, let's see, we're here. Go back down to give it a little bit more somber. So we're going to shift another mode, darken it up a little bit, because right now here we're doing this. This is Ionian. And then Lydian. Oops, sorry. So that's really the brightest. And then back. So that's sort of serving two purposes there. And then to make it, I'm hearing it just go a little bit darker. So we're just going to shift modes now to Mixolydian. And then to resolve to the, standard dominant. So we can go back. And I don't want to do the same thing going back to the C, F, C, F. I want to change that up, but I want to stay within the same realm that I'm already in. So maybe something like, we'll skip to the... Backtrack. So second time. Let's see. Or what if we do this? So we come out of this. Let's see. Substitute. So it's a D, suspended ninth. And then I want to do something similar. So the original line was this. And I like that. But instead of going up, we'll maybe skip. Again, back to the Lydian. Could do that. So that would be, let's see, starting again, we'd be here. And then decided to do this. So now we're pretty well in F here. So, let's see, do I like this? Yeah, see, I want that F sharp. like that. Let's see. So that can work if we go to the B flat from, so we start the second half of that phrase, we're F, 7th, and then the Lydian, depending on how we voice it, that can work. So it functions as a passing tone. And I like, because I like the contour of the line, I don't like this. It's too dark. I want. I see how much of a difference that makes. Yeah, I like that. We'll try it. We'll see. So again, from the second half of this. So that would be standard, but what if we do something a little different? What if we substitute something to take it? What I'd like to do, I like to play with irregular phrases when it comes to this stuff. So, I mean, this is sort of, this concludes, this gets us back to tonic, gets us back to C. This, where was I? Sorry. Which is fine. But, like I said, I like to play with irregular phrases when I can. So to maybe extend this out, we could throw a substitute in here, delay the resolution a little bit. So we go from here. I like the major. Nope, that's too dark. I don't like that. That's way too dark. Whereas this has a nice. And we can throw that 7th in. For some reason, major 7ths have something to do with spring for me. That's just, I don't know why that is. It's probably a jazz tune that I used to play or something. And then at standard, just that delays that resolution a little bit. Let's try that. So we're here. A flat. And then to the E flat. E flat 6. So we got. And then scaling that melody. So we had this. So now we're going to start on this. So moving it down a half step. See how that sounds. So we're here to E flat. And then we need to let's see. Let's try that second half. That could work. Augmented. And then that so okay, so our first, let's see if I can remember this now. Okay, so that works. What I like about it is there's some. We're really just playing with a couple rhythmic things and a couple melodic things, because we've got this figure. And then on the repeat, we don't let it do that. We don't keep that same shape. We move the shape and turn it. So. And then repeat. So just a half step shift and then resolution back. So that actually, I kind of like the sound of that. Okay, so that's not bad. I kind of like the way that's going. It's got the right kind of feel, at least to me, it does. I can hear that line at the beginning. Let's just play around a little bit. I'll go straight to the English horn here and see what we got. Out of range there. It works. Where else might I like to hear that? I'm kind of hearing it in the middle register here, so maybe in the viola. So that's something to keep in mind. I kind of like that. So that might be something to think about. I'll shelve that for a second. So I kind of would like to have a second part of this. We're here. Whoops. So where can we go from there? I like this. I really like this augmented thing. It really gives us a feeling of uncertainty, which I think, with what's going on, I think this is definitely uncertain. The idea I had for the title of the piece, I don't know if you can see it up here, but it's just Forgotten Spring, because we're losing the spring, or our spring season, rapidly here as we're dealing with this. So this can go a number of different directions. I mean, that's the one thing about augmented chords, is you have a number of different resolutions. You can resolve to both major and minor triads. You can go to A minor, which is show beam kind of thing. You can go to E major, actually. What you're looking for is the smoothest movement of the voices that you can find. So this gets into a bit of intervallic theory and things like that. So if the three notes are C, E, G sharp, you're half steps away from a number of different resolutions. You're half step away from A minor. You're a half step away from E major. You're a half step away, 2 half steps away from F major. You're 2 half steps away from A major, and you're 1 half step away from C major. but that we're coming from the C major to the C augmented, so that's not necessarily going to get us anywhere. That's just sort of one of those tension back and forth kind of things, which is a cool textural thing, but we're trying to get somewhere harmonically. So so that tends to be where I'm kind of going because of the spring theme, trying to get back to this idea of the things about spring that are light and airy and bright, and then being taken away because of the uncertainty a little bit. So maybe could even repeat that thing, going from major to augmented again. And then something different, but keeping with the same rhythmic idea that I've already set up. We've got this quarter note motif, you know, this back and forth, oscillating back and forth kind of thing. So I like to keep that same kind of rhythm, but not have the oscillation between the small interval and the big interval. Something a little bit more I don't know, chordal in nature. Maybe that's something simple like to the ninth. Let's see. How's that sound? So again, we're going constantly back and forth between that minor and major thing. So here we're in A, and giving it a little bit of that with the ninth against, you know, just walking up the arpeggio starting on the third and resolving down to the minor third and now to the major third. Spelling out that major triad. And then I feel it shifting again, but starting on the same note, but now changing the interval relationship, where before we were spelling out the major seventh, major ninth chord. Now we're going to start on the seventh, starting on the third. Now we're going to start on the seventh. There's that constant relationship between thirds and sevenths. The start on the major seventh of the D chord of going to the 4. Again, going up 4. So this is. So what we've got basically going here is a movement in fourths coming out of this D. And then shifting substitution, maybe. Could get us back to this. let's see, we're A. Oops, sorry. It works. Maybe it's a little too quick. I don't know if that center section needs to be developed or not more. That's something that might work out, but you know, it works. It gets us back home. Then we can change it even further from there. So this is the way the process works for me when I do it this way. There's other ways, there's other approaches that I have. Sometimes it's a very methodical process of where I develop as much material as I can based on just a few things. I might take a vertical structure like like just a pentatonic maybe. So right, C D E G A. We'll just keep it in C to be safe, to be simple here. I might take that vertical structure and think, okay, what have I got? What am I looking at here with just that amount of material? I've got a number of different intervals. I've got a lot of seconds. There's two perfect fifths. There's a major third and a minor third. Did I say fourths? Yeah, and there's two perfect fourths. So, and then if you add the octave, you have even more. Right? You have a sixth, and you have a fourth, another minor third, dominant seventh. So there's a lot of interesting material in there that you could play with. That would be one way that I could approach it, is I would just start tearing apart the intervals, the outside intervals, inside intervals, things like that. And then I would also look at different shiftings of different voicings of that. So if this is your starting voice here, right, and then you just move everything, and then move it again. And then you're back to the original. You can start to look at the lines that creates. Now this gets into this whole interval theory kind of thing, where you're not really working within, you're working within functional harmony, but you're relating it more to how the voices move. And I don't want to get all into that, because that's a whole other thing to open up. But that's another way I would do it. I would pick a mode and simply work within a mode. Let's say Dorian. just start improvising in it to see what I could come up with. Not, earth shaking, but it works, and that's just playing in the Dorian mode. So anyway, a lot of different approaches to working out some pieces. With this one, I actually kind of had a couple note ideas in mind and then started to sort of write harmony around it. Other times, a certain harmonic progression may spark something, and then I have to figure out how I want to do that. So there's no set, hard and fast way to do this. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at least not for me. So let's go back and look at what we've got here, and I'm going to see my time involved because I don't want to bore people to death. Like I said, watching the sausage get made is not always that exciting. So we started with this line. Very simple. So let's try and think about this now in terms of how we want to present it. Then I don't know if we want to go back and repeat the whole thing. Maybe a variation. I shifted this where the first time around the line was. So then I just shifted it, starting on the D. Lots of different ways you can do that. Again, here we are at these half step resolutions going from A flat to C to flat major 6. If you want to think about it that way. So that would be or possibly, let's see. Okay, so that's kind of the first part of this. I've got something going here. I'll probably fool around with it a little bit more to sort of decide how I want to do that. Start to think about the orchestrations on it and how I want, what I want playing where. Play it one more time here. I like the idea of starting out very simple here. It was a note, was it? Where did we go? Oh, I'm sorry. That's right, with that D2. Quite sure about the transition there. Have to think about that. Let's see. Or no, we actually talked about doing this, didn't we? So we're here. Is it a major, minor? Okay, so anyway, I think that's it for this round. So stay tuned for part 2. We'll start to talk about instrumentation and things like that, and how we're going to kind of start to lay this out with the orchestra. Thanks for hanging out, and hope to see you the next time. And that's it. We'll see you next time. Thanks.